Welcome and thanks for joining us for this episode of Scope. As citizens of Papua New Guinea prepare to cast their vote to decide who will lead the country for the next 5 years, election observations are more important than ever. Election observations are a valuable tool for improving the quality of elections. The UN Watch states that observers help build public confidence in the honesty of electoral processes. Observations can help promote and protect the civil and political rights of citizens participating in the elections. In partnership with the PNG Electoral Commission, the Department for Community Development and Religion, for the first time in the history of the country, will take part as domestic election observers in the 2022 national general elections. 15 senior managers and officers from the department will be deployed to 14 centers across the country.
Election observations are fundamentally an exercise in support of democracy. According to the Electoral Knowledge Network, election observers serve as impartial watchdogs who can assess whether the results of an election truly reflect the will of the people. Genuine democratic elections do not guarantee democratic governance, but are a prerequisite for it. They provide political legitimacy for elected leaders and a foundation from which to govern, reducing the scope for non-democratic challenges to power. Elections serve to resolve competition for political power peacefully and are more likely to lead to stability than non-democratic forms of succession. The citizens of Papua New Guinea will head to the polls to cast their vote, ultimately contributing to the decision of who will lead the country for the next 5 years. The PNG Electoral Commission is the management body responsible for delivering the country's 2022 national general elections. The question now posed by the Department for Community Development and Religion is, will the election be free, fair and safe for the segment of the vulnerable population that the DfCDR represents? On Wednesday, June 29, DfCDR announced that they will deploy 15 senior managers and officers as domestic national observers to some parts of the country to observe and report. Secretary Ubase says the need to have domestic election observers from his department in the 2022 national general election is in line with the recommendations by the Australian National University's report of the 2017 national general election. He says it was observed that the election was marred with widespread intimidation and violence. The report also documented 204 deaths due to election-related violence. It is notable that ANU has also observed in previous national elections in PNG. Hence, comparatively, the election-related violence and deaths in 2017 were observed to be far more widespread than in previous elections. Secretary Ubase said such a damning report of widespread violence is of concern to his department. Ubase said it is deductible from the report that the vulnerability of the segment of populations that his department, DfCDR, represents are likely to be intensified during the upcoming polling and counting period. Secretary Ubase says as domestic national observers, his department will deploy 15 senior managers and officers to some parts of the country to observe and report. The provinces include all the Highlands provinces, Medan, Murbe, East Sepik, East New Britain, Central Gulf, and the National Capital District. Acting First Secretary for Community Learning, Environment and Informal Economy, David Nugi, offered an explanation as to why the department will be deploying to certain provincial centers.
One is our capacity issue, funding, to send everyone to every provinces and by force leaving. It's just a pilot start. First step to formalizing that partnership for future. Second is most of these by statistics are most hotspots provinces. This based on previous election, there's women, children, PWDs, violence been recorded, harassment on this land. So you can see, like, the most 7 islands provinces, there's a tendency of high ratio of violence, whether in the polling area or outside of the polling area. And still, there's evidence of, we want to actually, by observing this election process, we can identify it.
The key vulnerables for observation include the major challenges facing the women candidates, the voters throughout the electoral process. The major challenges include the election-related violence, especially violence against women in election, whether the election inclusively promote the rights of persons with disability, elderly population to vote in a free, fair, and safe environment will also be noted.
Secretary Obase says the domestic election observation by DfCDR and its subsequent report will contribute to policy dialogue, legislative reforms, and systematic awareness towards improving the interventions to inclusively promote and protect the rights of women, persons with disabilities, and the elderly population in the electoral process. A message with similar sentiments was delivered by Police Commissioner David Menin at the launch of the Joint Security Task Force's operations on June 24, 2022. The Department for Community Development and Religion says they will be utilizing an application called the ComCare app, developed by Moses Robbie.
This is amazing because the app that we are using is real-time. You can observe right there and then and upload it, as long as there's data, access to network. And then central administrator, who is our Deputy Secretary, Mr. Warren Marabin, and the ComCare app designer, Moses Robbie. They will get real-time data when we enter. It comes into the system, and they can, right after that, they'll know who is there on the ground and who's entering data. And for us, it's check and balance, who's working, who's really going and observing, by filling in those variables online on the app. When it comes here to the central command, it enters, and it can generate in real time on the spreadsheet the data. For example, which ward, LNG, the polling station, how many women candidates, are they candidates, is it open or regional? And as you go down, are they persons with disability contesting? Or have you observed any violence committed during that? Is the security personnel on the ground? Is it safe? On this, we've actually spent 2 months of screening of all the questionnaires. So it's been now changed, converted into variables in the app.
The ComCare app can be accessed by the observers without network data and updated once in an area that has network connection. However, the observers will also be utilizing physical data entry methods.
We'll also be using the questionnaires, printed questionnaires that we fill out. So if our phones die in those remote areas, then at least we have the hard copies to fill in. When we come back to areas where there's connectivity, we just enter into so that's how we try to manage that.
Secretary Obase says under his leadership, he will be ensuring that the report compiled from data gathered by the observers is fully utilized to bring about relevant transformation.
As a new secretary, and I've been in the department now for almost one year, 2 years. We have to make a difference. Like we have seen that documents or even reports go to Parliament or go to other bureaucracy in this country, it doesn't go forward. But for me, I will continue to pursue to ensure that we get those documents fully realized. One of my aims is that as soon as we conclude the national general elections, I want to target the entire women who contested the election, whether they win or whether they come last or in between. I feel that we must make a start. As soon as the election concludes, I want to support women from there. This time we will only focus on women who contested, so that we can have a better chance come 2027. So this is one area that we will be looking at. Part of this observation is to see how best we can be able to see how women can play in the same level field as men. And we want to see some of the areas why women fail, and we want to address in this area so that come 2027, we are ready. And this time we will give a good challenge to our men. But as a new secretary, I'm telling you now that we will not stop. I will continue to push my minister to ensure that we get the report to Parliament, or whichever agency that is responsible. We must get them to action those reports so that we see actions taken when comes the next election.
This is a first ever national cultural policy described as a portal to addressing the economic potential of cultural tourism in the country. Artists from across the industry expressed their gratitude of now being represented and recognized by a policy for the community. For the first time in the country's history, the government is increasing funding to the cultural sector. There is a huge potential for economic growth through cultural tourism and artistic creative industry.
The National Cultural Policy is the first ever launched, and there is huge potential offered by this policy. While the focus is on culture, the policy goes further in addressing the economic potential of cultural tourism and promoting developing of the cultural and creative industries. Master of Ceremony Dr. Michael Mell, in his opening remarks, said culture has a very significant part to our communities, has been part of our various communities right across this nation. Over time, culture has taken the back seat in terms of driving this country and its communities. A back seat in the sense that culture has a place, but in many respects, other aspects have taken dominance in our country. Secretary for the Department of Prime Minister and NEC and NCC Board Chairman Ivan Pomaliu, in his address, said that the policy was important as it addressed the needs and challenges that have been overlooked over the years. He said the policy would revamp and reform these institutions. He acknowledged the immense efforts that went into the policy development work by the National Cultural Commission and those that led the charge. Secretary Pomaliu commended Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture, E.C. Henry Leonard, for leading the process and other areas of work as well.
The policy gives us the impetus to support. We resource the ideas that is already available to us in abundance. From the board's perspective, let me assure the Prime Minister and the Minister and our government that the board will do its part to ensure that the objectives and the outcomes of the policy are clearly achieved. We can't remain idle and expect miracles to happen. We have to be proactive, we have to be forthright, we have to be creative in this whole area of work. But it goes without saying, partnership is key. For that, we assure you that the board will play a big role in ensuring that we work closely with our partners, that we develop the required networks at our different levels to make sure that all of us are able to come into this space and work.
Ambassador Pomaliu added that because the policy was developed without the engagement of expensive consultants, only limited resources were given by the Treasury and Planning departments. This included the timely assistance by the Tourism Promotion Authority to come with this policy. In his opening remarks, NCC Executive Director Stephen Kilanda said that the agency had been operating without a policy since independence. The launch of the policy marks an exciting moment for NCC and the nation as a whole. He said the policy is very important for them as a cultural agency with clear mandates to deliver on cultural programs. Kilanda stressed that NCC has a daunting job of preserving, protecting, safeguarding and developing the arts and cultures of Papua New Guinea.
Recent international studies have shown that culture and creative industries are the fastest growing sector in the world, with estimated worth of $4.3 trillion per year. The culture sector now accounts for 6.1% of the global economy, generating an annual revenue in excess of $2,250 million per annum, and nearly 30 million jobs worldwide, employing more people between 15 to 29 at age.
Kilanda said the policy is important as it provides them direction and confidence to go about doing their work and collaborate with their partners locally, regionally, and internationally. Gone are the days of doing things in an ad hoc manner. He said that whilst the policy is being implemented, they are hoping that Treasury and Planning departments come good with funding for 2022, as NCC has a few other important policies ahead of them to deliver. That being the Traditional Knowledge and Expressions of Culture Bill and its related policy to address intellectual property pertaining to the use of cultural goods and TK that they hope to complete soon. This from the earlier work of Dr. Eric Kwa when as a lecturer at UPNG in 2010. The other policy to be developed is a film policy and its regulatory measures. The film industry in PNG is under-regulated and underperforming, particularly NCC's very own National Film Institute. The NCC believes that a policy will assist the NFI and others on how to go about film production in Papua New Guinea. Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture, Isi Henry Leonard, said the policy is a response to a lack of policy intervention over the last 47 years, which had seen an adverse impact on the delivery of cultural services and development of culture in PNG. The National Cultural Policy sets out to address this oversight and provide strategies for intervention through this policy. In his opening remarks, Prime Minister James Marape said with this being a first-ever cultural policy for the country, since gaining its independence 47 years ago, he was very pleased that under the watch and lead of Minister Leonard, this was a notable achievement worth mentioning. He added that a good policy is known to provide a roadmap for appropriate intervention and actions and commended Mr. Kilanda and Minister Leonard for their hard work elaborating that culture should be seen for its economic benefits as well.
See culture also from an economic perspective. When we talk about going rural, that is where 90% of Papua New Guinea is today as we speak. When we talk about connecting the unconnected, that is where 90% of Papua New Guinea are at the moment. When we talk about economically empowering our people and finding ways for them to be better in their own society, what is the quickest, easiest, and earliest opportunity to give to our people? And something that we are born with into our society is our environment, is our culture, is our identity, is agriculture.
With the endorsement of the National Cultural Policy 2022 to 2032, the government has reached some important decisions on the policy. These are 2 of the 6 National Executive Council decisions. A. Approved government funding to implement the National Cultural Policy 2022 to 2032 under the NCC's Capital Investment Program budget, It is important that government money goes out to result-driven projects with tangible results to show for our investment. B. The government approved to increase the NCC's yearly operations budget to 20 million kina from the current 7 million kina average and further increase its capital investment program component to 25 million kina. Altogether 45 million kina total annual appropriation for the NCC. This is a huge boost to this very important cultural institution so that its money woes are a thing of the past, that it applies the money to building and improving on its capacities, programs and activities, and build up the 3 cultural institutions that are the Institute of PNG Studies, National Film Institute, and National Performing Arts Troupe to carry out their functions. For the first time in the country's history, the government is increasing funding to the cultural sector. There is huge potential for economic growth through cultural tourism and artistic creative industry. As the night progressed, members of the art and creative industry gave their remarks for the policy launch. These well-known artists of their own genre, Alan Kedea, Florence Joke, and Aki Tumu, had the opportunity to speak on behalf of the society they represent and express their gratitude of now being represented and recognized by a policy for their community.
What we needed was a home. What we need is a home. A home where all musicians across the country could come together. Wampla Houseman, Ruma Tamwana. And tonight, I'm very thankful that this Ministry of Tourism, Art and Culture, Tourism Promotions Authority, and the National Cultural Commission, along with NEC, has set about the blueprint to architect and build our new home. Music in PNG now has a place we can call home under the National Cultural Commission.
Big Journey true. Personally, me walk him lo bilum, me run outside, me go lo all get a hap, me look him, bilum me start, tasol no kat one play, me look out him bilum. All man meri karim bilum natin, only no side story blo bilum. Only no save bilum and blow one map. So time you me look him, culture bring me him diverse. So time me look him lo display, me put him honey go on top, na me walk a festival bilum festival inside lo Papua New Guinea. One time support blow, government blow me bla lo, the museum, na NCC it, na look out him old story, na design, all something is up inside lo bilum.
PM Marape launched a policy that was brought in extravagantly by NCC board members and artists, followed by a presentation of gifts and entertainment.
And that ends Scope this evening. A kind reminder to apply simple measures to prevent the transmission of the coronavirus. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water, cough or sneeze into your elbow, and exercise social distancing. If you are feeling sick, please stay at home. You can also call the COVID-19 hotline number for more information or assistance. Thank you for your company. Bye for now.